Okay, so I was gonna wait till after Nats originally, and it did end up waiting, but my reason was so that I could post like something like a good average. That didn't happen, and then get people to the channel, and then they'd see this, because this I think is the most important video I could ever make, and I'm not sure I'm gonna do a good job at it. So, square one inserts. You've probably seen them at competitions before. You've probably received them in your square one before. There is a regulation, I've got to pull up right here, A2B1. For square one, the organization team may enforce placing a thin object in the puzzle to prevent accidental moves from being applied before the start of the attempt. If these objects are used, this must be announced before the round starts. So, what is it saying? It's saying that if the organization team decides to, so between the delegates and listed organizers, enlisted delegates and listed organizers, they can decide to put a thin object in the puzzle. So you would think, oh yeah, we're just preventing it from misaligning. From someone who doesn't compete in square one's point of view, we're just making it so that it won't misalign. They can take it out, it's fine. They can do their CSP tracing with the thing in, they can take it out quickly, it's not a big deal. The time that it takes from inspection is negligible, and of course we would not want someone to receive a missed scramble. For example, if someone receives this cube shape, having it like this, if they were to do their normal alg, they would receive parity. I mean, they would not receive parity. If this gets aligned by even one piece, well, by just one piece, you'll have parity. And if it does it too, then there's no parity, but it does, like, it still does some swaps. And the same, I'm using this example because this is 100% symmetrical, and even in a video, you would not be able to really notice that something like this got misaligned. Now, when it comes to the insert, it's mostly preventing misalignment from these pieces. If you put it in, all it's doing is creating more tension, I guess, right here, but it can still make these slices. So there are other cube shapes in which that would go undetected. Let's just use this one as an example. This. You didn't notice a change in the cube shape, did you? Outside of the slice. And the slice is something that you wouldn't normally notice in a video being misaligned. If you're just glancing at it real quick to check scramble accuracy. Or if you're even just discussing with your friends, like, oh yeah, I got this cube shape. And after after your round is over, you're not going to be able to decide with your friends. At most, you might say, oh, I got parity, or I didn't get parity. But that's simply just tracing CSP. You're most likely not going to discuss if you got parity or not, if you know CSP. And even if you did, like, it depends on your solution. Like, you won't always, things can change. So why do we just place it one insert going vertically? Well, the answer is because that's what we can easily do. People assume that when we put something like this into something like this, that it's going to move. Now this is a magnetic puzzle. I'm going to tell you right now, it's not going to move. I don't have them anymore because I decided to take it apart for spare parts for the Volt. But I had this, let me see if I had, okay, it's all in shambles, you're not going to be able to see it. I had this Volt, and it was a really bad Volt, and it was intentionally bad because I was just using it for pieces. I needed it to be loose enough so I could take the pieces out pretty easily without breaking them, and it would overall misalign pretty easy. At a Colorado competition where I was trying to convince the organizer and other delegate of the competition to not use inserts, at least for the final round, I got that puzzle, and I threw it forcibly through this, one of these, and no misalignments at all. It was thrown forcibly through. It broke through this, no misalignments. It landed on the table. It had no magnets in it. It had no loop to make it turn better. But that being said, it was so loose. So that didn't convince them. We ended up using inserts, whatever. So why do we use inserts in Square One but not in any other puzzle? For example, in 3x3 at Nationals in 2018 in Salt Lake City, Max Park had a misscramble in OH. It was off by one move, and it could have. There are two possibilities. It either was just not noticed from the scramblers, or it moved in transit. And I'm one of the people that believe that it most likely moved in transit, and was at one point in the correct scramble state. Inserts could have prevented that, right? Had we used enough. Well, in 3x3, it would require a significant amount more of inserts. I believe it would just require 3 or maybe 2. Yeah, I think just 2. And that's doable. You can take those out. Like, you could easily. I don't have a 3x3 on me. So I just got back from that, so I have it unpacked. All my stuff's in my other room still. But basically, you could get a 3x3, so we can use this instead. And I don't have anything I can. I have this thing that has a phone number, and I'd really rather not flash a phone number. Okay. Get your 3x3, you can put it in an axis like this, and then another axis like that, too. And you can make this like easily pinched up like that. We don't do it. Now, why don't we do it? Because we've never done it. Why would we do it? And obviously, it's not because it's not a shape-shifting puzzle. It's not going to turn in transit. There's no reason for it. What about Scoob? There was a world record that had to not count because there was a turn that was applied in transit, and it suddenly became an illegal scramble. I believe it was just because it became one move. There weren't enough moves to solve it or something. But regardless, it was a misscramble. Why don't we put inserts in Scoob? What caused it? Well, what caused it was, I believe, the fact that they were using not like these paper ones, but these cups that were kind of harder. And when it landed in, it did a turn or something. I'm not entirely sure. I don't really remember that incident. I wasn't cubing, I don't think, competitively at that time. But, as it is, we don't use inserts for Scoob. How would we put an insert in Scoob? Well, I think we get away with 2 inserts. So, we don't use inserts for 3x3. We don't use inserts for Scoob. We use inserts for Square One. What about Pyraminx? Should we use inserts for Pyraminx? Tips move. Well, inserts I do believe would be too hard to use for Pyraminx. That's just my opinion. They're hard to even fit the puzzles into a lot of cups as it is. So we won't use them. So what makes Square One special? Shapeshifting. Everyone thinks that shapeshifting makes it so that it will turn an inspection. And it won't. Not on all puzzles. Especially not puzzles that have come out in the past 3 years. Ever since the cheat, I would argue, puzzles haven't really had that big of an issue moving in inspection or moving in transit. And even then, the chi didn't really do that. The chi was pretty stable when it came to stuff like that. Most competitors, at this time at least, either are using a chi, because that's what they're used to, and that's when they started competing, and they haven't found a cube that fits them yet. The Yushin because they want something that's really fast and have either modded it or can just turn a lot more accurately. The volt, for people in between the two, or a budget Square One, which is for people who don't really care too much about Square One. Now, the Yushin is a budget Square One. It's $10 for magnetic and $6 for non-magnetic. It's a budget cube. It's a good budget cube, but it's a budget cube. So, when people are buying one or are using what they have, they're using one of those. There will occasionally be a competitor, which hasn't I've not seen one of these in competition since I think the Chi-E came out, that will use either a Cube Twister Calvin's or an MFA. Square One hardware has gotten to the point where using that is about the equivalent of submitting a Rubik's brand, and people really only submit Rubik's brands at their first competition anymore. And even then, most competitors still don't do that. If someone's going to their first competition and they have a Square One, they will not have a Cube Twist Square One. They will not have a Calvin's. They will not have an MFA. They will not have an original. They will be using Chi or newer. When I'm saying Chi, I'm talking about like the first Chi. So, we've got that out of the way. These are the cubes that people are using. So let's start off with the most obvious one, budget cubes. They might not be using a Yushin, and that's fine. Those cubes come so tight, and the way that they turn, those cubes are not moving in transit. There is no way, especially if that 1 volt that I just demonstrated in Colorado, when I threw through the through the box multiple times actually, because I just demonstrated it to 2 people, didn't move. There is no way these are moving. Additionally, to ensure fairness, most of these puzzles that aren't the Yushin, like the I think the Cubing Classroom one and another one, often come so tight that you cannot physically put a business card in. So these puzzles actually make it unfair to everyone else, because it is physically impossible on some puzzles without actually elucidating the competitor's puzzle, which is not allowed. You would not want a judge, or you would not want a scrambler loosening a puzzle before you solve. You wouldn't want the scrambler doing anything to modify your puzzle. So then there's that. Then there's the Yushin. I'm actually going to cover the Yushin in what most people are using. Actually, I think it has its own thing right here. Yeah, it does. So there's budget cubes covered. Do we need inserts for budget cubes? No, we do not. Next, let's cover the Yushin. The Yushin is $10 magnetic. I don't have one on me because both mine that are fully assembled are in my cubing bag that I have not unpacked from that. It's just because I haven't wanted to really too much cubing. I've been tired a lot. But puzzle parts are like right here. Anyway, it's fully magnetic for $10. I would never tell a competitor to buy a non-magnetic Yushin, even though it saves them $4 or maybe $3. I don't remember. I would never recommend it, because you can get magnets for just a little bit more, and it's what the North American record holder uses. It is something that even if you're not good at Square One, you can use, and it can improve your times from simply hardware. So there's that. The Yushin. It's magnetic. That's the simple answer. I've never touched a non-magnetic one, and I would never encourage anyone to buy a non-magnetic one. I know that it will sometimes happen, and I've never tried one to be able to say anything else about it. I have never seen anyone submit one at a competition before, just because I think by that time they'd be like, oh, well, I'll just buy a magnetic one. No one, like I said, no one's going to buy a non-magnetic Yushin and actually use it in competition. And if it happens, I'd imagine it still would be less likely to turn the non-magnetic super useful. So I think we've dispelled that there. There are people using the volt. I've already explained with the throwing through the box thing as to why that's not going to turn. So then there are the magnetic ones, which especially are not going to turn. I think that's my point there. The chi. The chi is pretty old. Any of the competitors just getting into it are not using it. It is something that only people really that started around the chi when the chi started, and have not been able to transition to any of the other puzzles. To be fair, they're very hard puzzles to transition to, but it is definitely worth it to transition to either a Volt or a Yushin, I believe. That being said, some competitors still use them. Well, I will say on the loosest setting, they are very much going to turn. But competitors that are using those are people who have not upgraded since then, or like I've said before, the competitors who have not been able to adjust their training style or have not tried to, and have just decided to stick with it. These competitors are very few, but we have to acknowledge that they do exist. Now, as long as the puzzle is not super, super, super loose, which can happen with the threading of the core, which, if that's happening, then the puzzle is going to explode anyway, and there are going to be more issues with it. It'd be like if you submitted a Pyraminx that the tensions were so loose that it just like exploded. Or any puzzle, I guess. So we can't really just assume that it's like that, because we're not going, when we do anything else, we're not assuming that Pyraminx or something is going to come so loose that it just explodes. Matter of fact, if that's the case, we'd probably ask a competitor if they can do something about it. It's not in the regs that you have to, but I would probably say, hey, your Pyraminx is probably going to pop if we try scrambling this anymore. Can you do something about it? And with the Chi Square one, that's really the only time that it's going to. And that's just simply because it is tight enough that it's not an issue at all. These puzzles on the U and D layers do have enough tension to prevent them from moving. It's just how it is. It's just like a 3x3. It's the same amount of tension, if not maybe even more. I'm not entirely sure. So why do we use them and so I'd also like to say, I'm not saying that they can't move. That's obviously not true. A 3x3 can move in transit. What I'm saying is that it's about as likely as a 3x3 or any other puzzle. It might be a little bit more, and for something like a non-magnetic chi or that's super, super, super loose, or I can't think of anything else, but that's what I'm saying. This regulation, to my knowledge, I'm not entirely sure, don't quote me on this is what I'm pretty sure is the case, was with the old square ones, where you take the spring out to make it so that you could get it faster. And when you take a spring out on an older square one, that's just what's going to happen. It's going to misalign. It's like submitting a 3x3 that is going to not be able to stay in one place. Or a Pyraminx or something. Like a Scube where it's like weighted weird, where it's going to kind of always stay at a half turn. Which can happen, I believe, but you'd have to intentionally do that. And so that's why the regulation came out. And at that time, yes, I would support it. But I don't think the regulation should stay. So, I've explained why it's not necessary, but I haven't really explained why it's bad or why I don't like it. There are a few reasons. So the main reason that most people will say they don't like inserts is that it's a distraction to them taking it out, it can take them out of the zone taking it out, and that it takes a little bit of time away from their CSP if they're doing CSP. All of these, I'd say, are not like the most valid. You're expecting piece if the regulation A2B1 is followed correctly, the one that I read earlier in this video. You are taking away such a small amount of inspection from CSP that if you can't do it in that amount of time, you probably can't consistently do it in the amount of time anyway. So consider that. You're not really losing much inspection time either. Like regardless, and you can still inspect during it. It's not a big deal in that regard, in my opinion. My thing that I don't like about it is something that very few people talk about, and I don't know why. It's a really big issue. When you put a paper insert into a puzzle, first off, it's making contact with all the inside of the puzzle in that area, meaning all the lubricant that you have on there is going to be touching that insert. The way lubricant works, it will get on the insert. So you're taking lubricant out of the puzzle. That's not okay. We already said it earlier. You wouldn't be fine with a scrambler loosening your puzzle. tightening your puzzle or changing the tensions at all of your puzzle to make it so that, at all, at least especially without telling you. Of course, they're telling you in this case that they're putting the inserts in, but what you don't realize is that they're taking the lubricant out when they do that. What else? Lubricants like DNM from the cubicle are water-based, and inserts are almost always paper-based. So, it takes a lot of the DNM out specifically. Nationals 2018, between a few of my solves, I made it to finals, 4th seed, I had to put more DNM in my puzzle. Because I used DNM, I was heavily reliant on it. And after that competition, I realized that I couldn't really be reliant on it for major championships because we weren't going to just remove inserts. Because I figured it was necessary. And as an organizer of nationals this year, I kind of just gave up on pushing for for not using inserts. I do think that inserts, at least at nationals this year, I'd rather use them than not, just because it's less incidents as an organizer. But as a competitor, I can tell you right now, it was annoying. I did have to put DNM in my puzzle just because my puzzle was really, really bad. I tried to not have to use DNM, and then right before I had to go up, like the day before or something, for finals, my cube was just so bad that there was nothing I could really do about it, and I just had to borrow someone's DNM and put it in. I left the bottle on my stage so that in between solves, if I needed to, I could put it in. I didn't have to put it in between solves, but yeah. So we've got that it takes lubricant out. But something that we haven't talked about yet is putting lubricant in. Oftentimes, scramblers will not necessarily pay too close attention to what insert is which, and they'll switch inserts around, meaning lubricant came out and is kind of on that insert from another cube's puzzle, and they're putting it in yours. Now, imagine if you're using a lubricant that is not compatible with someone else's lubricant or something, or can make it bad or something, and you now have that in your puzzle. That's not fun. I don't know much about lubricants, so I will say the whole compatible thing, that's something that I heard a long time ago, like you don't make certain lubricants. I'm not sure if that's still the same way, but I know that that's at least what I was told when I started cubing. I don't lube my cubes myself. My friend Isaac does it. But you obviously wouldn't want someone else's puzzle to keep lubing. Let's say you have all of these lubes in your puzzle that are more geared towards faster turning, and someone just has like weight 7 or something in their puzzle, and that now makes it into your puzzle. It's not going to be a fun day. So that's my reason that I don't want them. Well, I don't like them. I personally think that going on, it should be inserts maybe used in square ones at the discretion of the delegate, or potentially something along the lines of with the consent of the competitor, where if there is a misalignment, they just have to take that penalty of DNF if their puzzle does, well, not DNF, but if their puzzle does get mis-scrambled in transit, that they would have to get an extra for it, even though it's really not catchable. And because of that, it really won't affect anyone except on records. People who are going for records would then be able to decide, yes, I want an insert in my puzzle so my record won't be DNF'd. That being said, records generally get checked at the competition. And really following the record. Immediately following the record. Meaning that they would then get an extra. Of course, a record like in a single is very hard to get again on just like any set of scrambles, so obviously you wouldn't want to have to get an extra on that scramble, but I feel like it's something that if you believe your puzzle will not be turned in transit, like almost all puzzles, then you shouldn't have an insert. Additionally, there's a new puzzle that's going to be coming out, I don't know when, the Volt 2. They might not stick with that name, I don't know. I don't know Chi well enough to know if they tend to stick with those kinds of names. But that's what it's being called by both Chi and Rasmus. And it's going to come magnetized as well, which is going to get even more people on magnetic puzzles. So why are we still using them? Because we have a regulation in a while. Now what can you do? You, as a competitor, can bring this to your organizer's attention and your delegate's attention. Not only that, but for competitors that are using puzzles that just don't know any better because they haven't bought one from a while ago, that would need to have something changed, that would potentially, in most people's eyes, need an insert. Bring extra puzzles for that. Bring puzzles that they can use instead so that it's not going to have that issue. If they don't care about their puzzle that much, that their puzzle's in that kind of condition where it's going to move in transit, they don't care enough to actually use that puzzle. They'll be fine on literally anything, and would probably get better times on a borrowed puzzle. Just how it is. It's like the competitor that hasn't upgraded a 3x3 in forever, and they've been using stickered puzzles because that's what was legal the last time they bought a puzzle. And so it's like an hour-long V2 or something, and all of a sudden they go up and they borrow someone's magnetic GAN-X or Waylong WRM, and they're going to do better regardless. It's such a big jump in hardware. It's not that, oh, I'm not used to the puzzle. You can't use that when there's that big of a jump. So what can you do? You can buy a bunch of Fusion Little Magics that are magnetic. It costs $10, and the most that you'll really need to buy would be like 1 to 3, depending on how much of a chance you're willing to take that someone's going to have a puzzle that would turn. In Utah where I am, we don't use inserts because it's saying that the organizer team may enforce it placing an object in the puzzle. It's not saying that they have to. This is basically an optional regulation. Well, so it's not optional in the fact that like you can just decide if you want to follow it or not. It's just optional in the fact that it's letting an organizer team decide if they want to do something that the regulation outlines. If it was optional, then it wouldn't matter if you followed it, would it? And then you wouldn't have to announce it. You do have to announce it if you do it. That's the point of it not being optional. Otherwise, it would be a guideline. Although I do believe it should be in the guidelines instead. So in Utah, we don't use them. We haven't used them in a long time, outside of NATS 2018. That was not my decision, though. I made actually a big deal about it, and no one cared. But so is life. I have not done it because of mostly this reason. Additionally, it's just extra work. We also tend to have a local cube store come to events, so we don't get like cubicle business cards because Cubicle's not sponsoring it, just because it's being sponsored by by a local company, and I don't think he has business cards anymore. He might, but I don't think he does. Sorry, I'm tired. But we haven't used them, and we have had 0 incidents involving misalignment in transit. 0. And almost all of our puzzles are magnetic that get submitted. Most competitors actually are using magnetic bolts. Although I believe that the next competition that we have September 21st, we'll see a lot more Yushin Little Magics. So why use them? Because we have them. What can you do? Well, you can start an issue in GitHub. You can email the regulations committee. You can post about it in cubing groups. You can contact your delegate about it. You can organize a competition where you have everyone on board that is against it, or can easily convince a delegate to be against it. As an organizer, you tend to have more leeway in something like that than a normal competitor. And I guess you can share this video. But what if they don't? What if nothing changes? Say you don't send an email to the regulations committee, say you don't start a GitHub issue, say you don't post a community, say you don't talk to your delegates, say you don't organize a competition, say you don't do anything. Or maybe you did do something, but nothing changes. What can we do? Well, for starters, companies like the Cubicle that require their competitions that are sponsored that happen to use inserts, to use their inserts at the risk of prize money, should stop that. They should. And instead, we should work on developing inserts that don't absorb lube, the lube does not stick to them, and that on top of not turning the U or D layers, also doesn't turn the slice. Can this be done? Probably. I'm not a science man. Who do I think can do it? Off the top of my head, Chris Tran probably could. Do I think it's a top priority for someone like him? Probably not. He's probably got a bunch of other stuff going on. But I do think that he probably would be the person to understand the science well enough to make something that does not absorb lube, that would not affect the lube at all being put in and out. And maybe we don't do a solution like that. Maybe we do something like making lubricants that don't get affected by something like that repel paper. I don't know how the science stuff works behind this. I'm not a scientist, but I can imagine that's very possible. I personally have contacted the regulations committee, and this was pretty close to after nationals last year, 2018. And I was a delegate at the time, well, candidate delegate. I'm still a candidate delegate. And the response I basically got was, "We'll talk to your delegate." And my response was, "Hey, at all the competitions that I delegate, I have not had any scroll inserts. I do not let them do that because it's not like I didn't say that I didn't let them do it. I generally very harshly discourage it, to the point where they could, if they really, really, really wanted to. But yeah, they basically said that, and I said, yeah, we don't do it in Utah. Throwing in the whole "I'm a delegate" thing, so that they knew they weren't just talking to a competitor, and they would maybe actually read my last email, because it seemed like they didn't. And basically the consensus they got to was, we already made a decision on it, we're not going to make another decision on it. And that we contacted fast people and they said it doesn't matter to them. And I believe one of the people they contacted was Rasmus, who at the time was an SCS sponsor, and I'm certain was not using a water-based loop like DNM in his puzzle. I don't know if he is now or isn't, but that would be why one of the big reasons why he wouldn't have noticed a big issue, because the only thing that's super noticeable is in fact the DNM issue. You do notice it with other things, but oftentimes you'll throw it off as, oh, it's just because I was competing on it, it felt different when I was competing on it, which is absolutely not the reason why. They contacted him, and then also I was shown an email, a video from Jacob Ambrose. Jacob Ambrose doesn't do score one. I was shown an email, so Jacob Ambrose sent me an email because he's on the regs committee, with an example of Jaden McNeil's square one. It was OCR, his last average OCR that he got. And he's like, well, this puzzle, we talked about it, and that's, you would say his puzzle is okay and would be perfectly fine. And I said, yeah, and he says, well, this was misaligned. And the first thing I'm going to say is, how can you tell if it's misaligned? I can get the fact that it's, like, you don't know which way it's supposed to be misaligned to without actually looking at the scramble, which I don't know if he did, but it doesn't seem like something that someone would really do. How do you know it's misaligned? Like, a little bit of misalignment's fine, like if it's less than 45 degrees, but even something like this is less than an edge, but that's even less than 45 degrees, which is what it's about. It's about the 45 degrees still. So it's not turning 45 degrees, and if it did, then this still doesn't matter. Well, I mean, it only matters if it's 45 degrees or less, really. So that was basically the consensus they got. I do believe that the emails just stopped. I don't remember why. I believe it was more of just a please stop annoying us. But that being said, if more people talk to them about this issue, then we can make real change. And even if the regs committee does stick to their ways of, no, this is how we're going to keep it, we can explore new decisions new possibilities with science, and also just not doing it on our own. The more delegates you can convince that this is the case, the less harassment to your puzzle gets done. The less violated your puzzle is. Like I said before, you would not be fine with a scrambler loosening your puzzle. More extreme example, would you be fine if a scrambler just threw a bunch of 50k in your puzzle just because they felt like it? No, you wouldn't. What's the difference between putting one competitor's 50k in from through a business card into their, and a scrambler putting an equivalent amount of 50k into your puzzle? It's just that it just runs intentional. That's it. It still is unconsensual. So, should we allow inserts anymore? No. We should not. And at this point I'm just going to keep repeating myself because that's what I do. So, that's the video.